Hi, I'm Zinnia. My sister slammed the cabin door in my face that night and laughed, "Go sleep with the wolves." And I did. While they toasted champagne by the fire, I clung to a tree in the snow, cold, shaking, forgotten. But by dawn, she wasn't laughing anymore. Because I didn't just survive the night. I came back with everything they thought I'd buried. What kind of family mocks your pain, steals your name, and calls it love? Would you stay, or would you finally fight back? Snow pressed against the cabin windows as I stepped out of the SUV, trailed by the echo of tires crunching on icy gravel. Whitefish, Montana. A place I once believed I helped build. In spirit, in sweat, in long nights poring over blueprints when Seraphine was in some board meeting. The air was crisp, the pines heavy with snow, and for a moment I allowed myself to believe, maybe this time would be different. My breath formed little clouds that vanished before I could even say my own name aloud. I lifted my bag from the car, leather strap pulling at my shoulder. I looked up at the log cabin, its windows glowing like warm eyes in the dusk. Seraphine, older by 5 years, had made sure it was everything a family retreat is supposed to be. Spacious loft, stone fireplace, those chairs with thick cushions that look soft even when frozen. Yet I felt the cold in my chest. Seraphine stood on the porch, greeting Father and Clarice, our mother's best friend. She threw her arms wide. "Welcome home," she said, voice polished. "This is going to be a weekend to remember." No glance in my direction, no mention of my name. I stayed on the step, wind tugging at my coat. Inside, I caught sight of a plaque, carved wood, polished brass lettering. It said, "Harper Family Lodge, built with love by our memories." Names were etched beneath. Mothers, fathers, Seraphine's, and then empty space. My name is Zinnia Harper. Always should have been there. But the brass under "built with love by our memories" had my name missing. I closed my eyes, swallowed the ache. Dinner was served in the great room. Huge windows framing darkness outside, a fire crackling on the hearth. I sat at the far end of the table, next to Thea and the children, little voices bouncing around me. Seraphine laughed about her online venture, the posts she'd made, the cabin photos she claimed she'd commissioned. I pushed mashed potatoes onto my plate, waited for someone to say, "Hey, Zinnia, come over here." No one did. Once the serving dishes rotated, someone offered me the last roll. I accepted, hands steady, though my throat burned. I looked at the portraits on the wall. Me as a child, snow up to my knees. Me at graduation. Me drawing cabin plans. Seraphine's face was always front and center. Mine was in a corner, half visible or cropped. Later, after the laughter died down and wine glasses emptied, I walked outside. I needed air in my lungs that wasn't smoky with perfume or false laughter. I stood under evergreens, low limbs bowing under snow. Silence except the wind. I could feel Seraphine behind me, footsteps crunching thin on packed snow. She cleared her throat. "Don't ruin this weekend, okay?" she said, voice soft but cruel. "We're guests here in your mother's memory." I turned, snow swirling at my boots. The moonlight made her face sharp. "I'm not here to ruin anything." I paused. "I just want what's mine." Hours later, I tried to go back in. The porch light blazed. I raised my hand to knock, but the door was locked. I froze. Confusion. I knocked again, louder. Muffled laughter. Through the frosted window panes, I saw Seraphine leaning against the frame, mouth curved, Father's silhouette behind her, Clarice's shadow behind him. They looked amused, as if this was some private joke. Then Seraphine's voice, carried by the cold air. "Go sleep with the wolves." They laughed. Light crested the horizon behind them, their laughter sharp, cutting. I pounded on the door, nails scrapping wood, snowflakes landing on my hair, on my eyelashes. My hands went numb. My breath came in ragged bursts. I tried to peer through the glass. Ice fogged the pane, but I saw Seraphine's eyes, mocking, satisfied. I sank to my knees in the snowbank, cold seeping through my jeans. I wrapped my coat tighter. "Don't let them win," I whispered to myself. I closed my eyes, cold biting my cheek. I remembered Mother's words when I was 8. You were the accident, the little burden. I had tried to be invisible since then. Maybe that's what they still wanted. Not remembered, not acknowledged. But tonight they took it further, beyond erasure, into abandonment. I drifted, memories cascading. The year I won art class for designing the treehouse, Seraphine had taken credit. The luncheon where I baked an apple pie and someone else served it as Aunt Seraphine's dessert. The times Father praised Seraphine's control, her vision, her voice, and I listened, hid behind my drawings, my quiet hopes. I rose, teeth chattering. I hugged myself. Snow swirling around me in darkness. There was a shed not far off, padlocked. I pressed my palm to rough wood, searched for a way in. None. The wind whipped, my boots heavy. I found a snowbank drift at the side, crouched behind it, knees tucked. I hugged my legs, trying to stop trembling, trying to survive this moment without crumbling. I replayed in my mind. You were always so small, Zinnia, curled up in corners. But I'm not small. Not tonight. I breath deep, air sharp and clear. I press my hand to my chest, heartbeat steady. I will remember this. I will collect all the pieces. Snow falls lightly as I lean back and stare at the cabin's glow. The laughter has died. My ears still catch echoes, mocking tones, Seraphine's smooth voice, Father's chuckle. But dawn is near, and with dawn, something shifts. My fingers thaw. My resolve hardens. I stepped back through the door as it swung open a crack. Morning light filtered weakly into the great room, illuminating the frost crystals that clung to the window panes. The cabin felt unchanged, but I was not. My hands still trembled from the cold, the dampness of snow melting into fabric around my wrists. I placed my coat on the rack, noticing the old plaid lining I had chosen years ago. My coat. I alone owned it. A small comfort. No one said a word. Father brushed past, carrying wood for the fire. Seraphine smiled as though nothing had happened. She asked Clarice about breakfast plans. Pancakes and bacon, maybe, she said. I nodded, but my eyes were on Seraphine's boots, the way she stood in the firelight, pretending her laughter last night hadn't echoed through my chest. I wondered whether her voice would carry guilt, or just another excuse. Callista was there too, pulling back a curtain to let light into the room. She tilted her head, her gaze fixed on my exposed knuckles. Red, raw. I'd washed away the snow but couldn't clean all of it. She whispered, "What happened, Zinnia?" Quiet enough that it wouldn't carry beyond us. I swallowed hard, lips dry. Nothing came. Sometimes silence feels safer than truth. I drifted toward the kitchen, hands trembling because the coffee maker's switch felt heavy. I filled a cup, let its warmth seep into my palms. Around me, family voices, casual chatter, Elizabeth talking about the drive up, Seraphine posting photos. A new design. My cabin branding project, Seraphine's caption said. I paused, heart tightening. I recognized the lines of the railing, the pattern of the skylight, all things I sketched years ago. Then I saw no mention of me, no acknowledgement. Her post had stripped me of credit, leaving me invisible in pixels and praise. Over breakfast, I set the plate down gently. The table was bright, morning sun grazing the wood. I tried to raise my voice. Seraphine, about your post. She laughed, a soft laugh, like bubble wrap. Light, annoying. Oh, come on, she said. You drew some sketches once, but I made it functional. You kid with lines. I built the thing. At her feet, Clarice placed butter, quiet. Father cleared his throat. Enough drama. Eat, Zinnia. I bit stale bread, sipped bitter coffee. My throat was thick from holding back tears that weren't entirely mine. I watched Seraphine's phone screen light up with likes. Her name engulfed mine in shadows. I tried to call the memory forward. The time I stayed up late drafting blueprints, the time I measured angles that she represented to contractors. I thought I was contributing. I believed I belonged. After breakfast, I drifted toward the fireplace, hoping the heat would thaw something inside me. There, above the mantel, a framed photo, the funeral photo. Mother in her favorite dress, Seraphine holding Mother's hand. And me? My face was cut out, literally removed. I stared until Thea, cousin, entered quietly. She didn't catch my eye. Maddie, younger cousin, shuffled away. Her face said guilt, or perhaps fear. I said nothing. Let the silence fill the room with accusation. Let them feel the textures of what they'd removed. I fled upstairs to my room. Door closed. Mirrors everywhere. I looked into my own eyes until I realized I no longer cared if anyone else saw me. I whispered at my reflection, "You're not invisible." Not anymore. The words trembled, but they were true. As afternoon light crawled through the windows, I wandered outside. I needed clarity, away from polished words and staged smiles. The snow still held its cold ache, but the sky had softened. I walked past pine trees shedding their white coats. Rustle of branches, distant call of a jay. I thought of Mother, telling me I had potential, artistry that deserved more than corners, art that I carried like a scar under my skin. Evening crept in. Seraphine's laughter drifted from inside as she entertained guests. A camera flashed. I paused on the threshold. The log walls glowed from light and warmth. I hesitated. I wanted to step forward, to say something loud and true. But instead I turned, retraced my steps through the melting snow, boots sinking slightly, water dark at the edges. I circled back to the creek behind the cabin, the water running, ice cracking, life moving even under cold skin. I sat on a rock, listening. Drip of water, crisp air, my breath visible. I held a sketchbook in my lap, blueprints I'd redrawn in the night, correcting lines, noting discrepancies. I would not let them erase me in design. I would keep evidence, names, dates, sketches with my handwritten margins. I could build a paper trail they couldn't ignore. Night came. Stars pricked black sky. I counted constellations I'd learned as a child. Orion, Cassiopeia. Mother had called me her star child. I closed the sketchbook and tucked it inside my coat. I let night's silence seep in, listening not for voices, but for truth. Tomorrow I would speak, not with anger, with proof. I would walk into the dining hall and show them what they stole. Show them who I am. I still remember the weight in my coat pocket, the torn pieces of Mother's writing. The cold of early morning seeped through the cabin walls, but I felt something thawing inside me. The rising sun lit the edges of frost along the attic hatch as I crept up the narrow wooden steps. My boots whispered over planks, each step triggering memories I'd kept boxed up for too long. The attic smelled of old cedar and dust, beams angled in awkward shadows. Light slanted through a small round window. I found the box I'd hidden months ago, a plain shoebox tied with twine, Mother's handwriting across the lid. Trembling, I untied it, the knot loosening. Inside lay letters. One stack wrapped in tissue paper, another with an envelope marked in yellowed ink. To my youngest, Zinnia. My heart raced. The envelope wasn't sealed, just tucked in, as though Mother meant for me to find it someday. I slid the envelope out, careful not to crease the edges. My fingers traced the signature, Mom. The date, 2 weeks before she passed. I felt a strange kind of gratitude and dread. I gently pulled out the letter. She wrote that she wanted the cabin to be mine, that I had dreamed first, sketched in notebooks, carried hope in my hands even before walls were raised. The cabin is yours. You loved it most. Her words glowed like embers in my chest. I sank onto a dusty crate beside me. Tears came, but not the kind that burn. It was relief mixed with a betrayal too deep to shout. Here was proof. I had mattered. She saw me. But in the light of that letter, I also saw how others had tried to erase me. I folded the paper across my lap and held both sides, hearing silence in the attic's sloping roof. In that silence, for the first time in years, I felt seen. When I came down, I found Father leaning over the fireplace, Seraphine nearby, fluffing pillows. The room smelled of cedar and candle wax. I carried the letter with both hands, arms trembling. My voice caught when I said, "Dad, look what I found." I laid the letter on the mahogany mantel, our family photos around it. He looked up, eyes shifting. "What's this?" he asked. Seraphine stepped forward, her jaw tight. I recognized the tension, the half smile that never reaches the eyes. She reached for the letter. "It's meaningless now," she said, voice soft but firm. She was so sick. Said a lot of things in confusion. My heart pounded. I thought, if she was sick, she wasn't confused about this. Or she wouldn't have written it. I braced myself. "Those words are hers," I said. "You can tear out photos, erase names, but she wrote them toward me." He raised an eyebrow. "Be happy for what you have now," he said. "Don't dig up old ghosts." My breath caught. I stood straighter, voice quieter than I wanted. "I'm not digging. I'm reclaiming." Before he could reach across the mantel, I grabbed part of the letter as Seraphine ripped it in half. The envelope tore. Paper fluttered. I held the pieces, skin damp. Flashbacks surged. Me, maybe 10, covered in paint in art class, winning first place. Seraphine holding the ribbon, father clapping for the neighbor's child instead. And at home, after mom died, father saying, "You mustn't make things harder." As if my grief had to be quiet, as if I weren't allowed truth. I slipped away into my room, clutching the letter fragments. I pulled out a desk lamp, turned it on. Yellow light spilled over torn words. "Dreamed first. Cabin is yours." I found an old scanner in a shelf, one I used for photos. I placed the torn edges carefully on its glass plate. Pressed copy. 2 clean copies. One for safekeeping, one I could show. Evidence, maybe. Proof they couldn't ignore. Night came sooner than I expected. Candlelight flickered in the hallway. Family voices downstairs. Seraphine's laughter, father's distant muttering. I tucked the copies into my journal. I wrote, "They tried to erase me, but she saw me first." I closed the book, placed it under my pillow. Lying in bed, snow pressing against window panes, I traced mother's handwriting in my mind. I repeated her words. "You loved it most." They echoed in my chest. I wouldn't let them tell me I was nothing. I drifted, but sleep was uneasy. Dreams of missing faces, voices speaking over me, doors closing. Yet in those dreams, I saw myself standing, upright, recognized. Tomorrow I would walk into the kitchen and speak names. Not accusations, but truth. I would show them what's real, and what's theirs to deny no more. That towel was hand-stitched by Mom, and Seraphine used it to wipe up spilled wine. I stood in the doorway of the dining room, watching the spill slide across the linen tablecloth, Seraphine reaching over with a careless smile, her fingers dragging the cloth down, the patterned towel in hand, scrubbing it like it didn't belong to someone else. My stomach clenched. We were gathered for family dinner night, something Seraphine had planned as a show of togetherness. The candles flickered on oak tables, guests gathered, laughter rehearsed. My throat dry, I carried a plate of roasted vegetables, walked past the line of family portraits we all share. Except mine now, subtly altered, somewhere out of frame. She saw me. She raised her glass. I forced a small smile. The cameras, 2 of them, one by the fireplace, one mounted near a corner with soft lights. This was not just dinner. It was staged, polished. I couldn't tell if I was inside someone else's memory or a mirror. Seraphine approached, arms unfolding. She stepped in, smiled wide. "Zinnia," she said, voice warm. "I'm glad you came." I paused. She expected me to embrace her. Instead, I stood still. No hug. Not for cameras. I met her gaze, unflinching. Her lips curved. She whispered, "Smile, or you'll regret it." A warning disguised as encouragement. My heart stuttered. I didn't move. Dinner proceeded. Conversation lilted from architecture trends to Seraphine's latest branding venture. Her words, facilitating contractors, marketing campaigns, client photos, all built around the cabin designs, the drafts that I once sketched, the angles I argued over, the measurements I checked at 2 a.m. Some of those whispers inside me screamed, she claimed all of this. My work, my hand, my hope. I sat between Thea and Clarice, holding cutlery awkwardly. My hands still bore faint scars from last night, the cold, snow pounding on wood. I touched my sleeve to hide them. At the other end of the table, Seraphine held court. Laughter, soft cheers, toast after toast, no mention of what she owed, no space for me. During dessert, Callista leaned forward. She'd slipped something beneath the napkin at my place, discreet, a manila folder, thick. I opened it when no one watched. Inside, legal records, deeds with signatures. The deed to the cabin, yours, Zinnia, or so I thought. But this document registered Seraphine as owner, dated just days after Mom's service. The signature duct-taped in place, smoothed over, marked by a date I knew Mom hadn't authorized. My throat closed. I folded the folder against my chest, hiding it under the table. I could smell the cinnamon of apple pie, vanilla of whipping cream, the warmth of candle wax mixed with tension. Seraphine caught my eye, her expression unreadable, but there was something in her eyes, the flicker of ownership, of triumph. Flashback drifted, Mother's soft voice saying, "We'll wait 30 days, let grief settle before decisions." My pencil in hand, sketch pad on lap, designs for windows and beams, months of work. I was proud, but I remember Seraphine asking, "What difference does a few days make?" I remember nodding, trusting. The betrayal was in that rush. The signed deed, the papers exchanged. I saw the timeline. 2 days after funeral, papers submitted, county records changed. No one told me. No one asked. I couldn't stay quiet anymore. I rose from the table. Strawberries caught in my teeth, pie stuck to my napkin. "Why didn't you tell me about this?" I asked Seraphine, voice low but clear. Candles flickered. Laughter cut off mid-phrase. The room shifted. She shrugged. "You were off doing sketches. I had to finish something." If everything waited for feelings, nothing would ever get done. Father coughed, leaned forward. Clarice looked away. Guests swapped glances. I set the folder on the table in front of Seraphine, my fingers steady. "You stole her voice. You stole mine. Mom gave me that cabin in words. The law says otherwise. That's not business. It's erasure." She shot me a cold look. "You were never going to act." Sweet Zinnia gets lost in her thoughts. I made sure things moved. My heart surged. Anger, hurt, pride, all mingled. "Not anymore," I said. Lowered voice. "I'll gather proof, and I'll make sure people know." The air felt electric. Guests were silent. Cameras paused. Lights still flickered. I left the table, stepping through heavy oak doors into corridor. My footsteps echoed. I leaned against wall, breath steadying. I opened laptop in my room, copied images of the deed, typed notes, dates, signatures, my mind racing. But I made a plan. Evidence, witnesses, voices. I would not let this pass. Night came. Outside, the wind rattled shutters. I pressed my palm to glass, watching moonlight carve the snowdrifts. I thought of that towel, of that moment with Seraphine. I thought of Mother's promise. I repeated to myself, over and over, "I matter. My work matters. Tomorrow, I will walk into Full House, folder in hand, ready to ask questions no one expects. Not as a whisper, not hidden anymore." I stood in the hallway just outside the kitchen, heart pounding, listening to Seraphine laugh inside. Her voice drifted over the aroma of cinnamon and toast. Light from the stove lamp cast long shadows. The room felt smaller. The towel, Mom's hand-embroidered towel, lay crumpled in Seraphine's hand, wet with wine, as though she used it to erase more than just a spill. Morning light had not yet fully broken through the frost on windows. In that dim hush, I made myself cross the room. My footsteps were soft. I held a mug of coffee, black, no sugar. And I wanted it bitter this morning. I saw Seraphine turn toward me, towel dangling, Clarice by her side, smiling but guarded. Father standing half in kitchen smoke, half in shadow. "That's Mom's towel," I said, my voice steady, though my hands trembled. "The one she stitched. You know it." Silent pause. She blinked, as if seeing me for the first time in weeks, or maybe in years. She shrugged. Old things hold memories. They get used. Her tone was casual. I felt the knife twist. I tried to step forward. She dropped the towel in a laundry basket, fabric soaked and sour from wine and obligation. I looked into her eyes, searching for regret. Found none. A stiff nod. Then she turned away. She walked off to help father with the dishes, humming a tune I used to sing with Mom. After breakfast, voices overlapped. Thea talking about plans, guests asking about the cabin experience, Seraphine describing renovations. I stepped out into the corridor toward Callista's room. I needed something clearer than words. Callista opened the door, her eyebrows lifted when she saw me. I placed the legal folder on her bed. Earmarked pages, highlighted signatures, the buried text message from Mom. You remembered when I asked? I said. She nodded, bitterly. They forwarded it to legal, she whispered. Then hid it. I pulled out my phone, lined the message, the deed date. It read, "The cabin is Zinnia's. You know why." My chest tightened. A mixture of vindication and sorrow grated against each breath. Callista looked at me. They thought if Mom was gone, and if you stayed quiet, they'd control everything. I closed my eyes. I thought of nights waking up to loneliness, of sketchbooks packed away, of measures taken in silence. My throat dry, I said, I need everyone here to understand. Not just believe me, but see the truth. We returned downstairs. The porch door was ajar. Neighbor guests wandering in, chatting, laughing. Seraphine moved through them, radiant in confidence. I followed her path like a tide approaching shore. At the dining area, she greeted visitors, flattered their compliments, swallowed their praise, all eyes on her. I approached with the folder in hand. The room quieted somewhat. Candlelight flickered on polished wood. I laid the documents on an empty seat. My voice rose only slightly. This was signed 3 days after Mom passed. You submitted deeds, claimed ownership. Did you tell anyone what Mom said in her last message? Silence. The flicker of guilt in Seraphine's eyes vanished quickly, replaced by defensiveness. Mom was confused. She didn't have capacity then, she said. I shook my head. That's a shame you'd use that excuse. There were gasps from whispering guests. Thea grabbed her partner's hand, looking ashamed. Clarice's face went pale. Father's lips pressed together. Someone began clearing plates, perhaps wanting to erase my presence, erase these words. Then Seraphine laughed, a brittle sound. You always were so dramatic, she said, trying to be her martyr. I paused. I felt tears burn at the corner of my eyes, not from pain, but from knowing I would no longer be quiet. Not a martyr, I said. Someone who deserves what was promised. Later, upstairs, I opened my journal, pressed the yellowed page of Mom's text beneath its weight. I found a pen, wrote, They buried words because they feared them. I gathered all documents I could. Deeds, message headers, emails where Seraphine had used my sketches. I typed up a timeline, lined evidence. I didn't want anger to make me reckless. I wanted strength. Night fell. Snow fell again outside. I listened as laughter echoed down the hall, footsteps in polished shoes. I felt the pull of past wounds, but also this strange warmth of resolve. The host's laughter, the clinks of wine glasses, the perfumed air, all of it sharp against me. Yet I had pulled something from the wreckage. Words that belonged to me. I crossed to the window, looked at the moonlit snow accumulating on pine boughs. Cold bitten branches welcomed the white blanket. I lifted my voice, the only one loud enough to hear, even if just by me. You touch one more thing that belongs to me, or her, and I won't just walk away. My voice echoed. They stopped. Eyes shifted. The room that had been festive felt hollow. And for the first time, I saw something change, a stillness. Guests unsure what to say. Seraphine's posture stiff. Father's face troubled. Clarice's eyes clouded. I stood there, breathing. Not broken, not erased. They served me cake, but not with my name. Not even a place card. I watched the candles flicker, false warmth glowing across expectations. Father's birthday brunch was underway. Sunlight dancing off crystal glasses, a buffet of scrambled eggs, fresh fruit, and maple bacon. The smell of coffee hung heavy. Guests smiled, clinked cutlery, exchanged compliments. Seraphine presided over it all, her laughter like porcelain cracked just enough to hear the tension beneath. I stood in the kitchen doorway while she gave instructions to the caterer. "Make sure the plates match the decor," she said. "Tell them the grass tablecloth can stay. It sets the mood." No one asked me to help. No request. Could you bring something? Or set a place? I carried my own coffee, stirring sugar with trembling fingers, listening to the traffic of dishes and voices. I pulled back a curtain and saw the table set. Carved chairs, a smooth white tablecloth, flower centerpiece. In front of each guest, a miniature cake, a custom frosting name in swirling script. Seraphine, Father, Clarice, Thea, Maddie. I searched the line for mine. Zinnia. Nothing. Instead, I saw at the far end a half-sheet cake, plain frosting, no name piped in. A cake nobody expects me to deserve. I held my breath, bitterness rising. Guests were seated. Seraphine's eyes found mine, bright and possessive. I chose a chair at the end, not near the name tags. I could almost feel her satisfaction, her photo scenes, her smile for the cameras. Maddie looked over at me, eyebrows raised. Callista shifted in her seat, lips pressed thin. Murmurs. "Wasn't there a name?" I heard it drift before it vanished. Then Maddie asked, loud enough for many to hear, "Why doesn't Aunt Zinnia have a cake with her name?" I could hear Forks pause. Seraphine rolled her eyes, an habitual gesture, practiced. She said, "Oh, Maddie, lighten up." She patted my hand, insincere. I tasted sourness in my mouth. My cheeks warmed, not from shame, but from indignation. Callista stood up. Her chair scraped. All eyes turned. Her voice was calm but carried weight. "This is abuse." She spoke as though someone had shoved a knife into her own chest. Gentle, terrifying. The room hushed. The cake names looked like tickets in a roster from which I'd been excluded. I felt validation surge. Someone saw it, not just me seeing. I carried the plain cake slice awkwardly. I stood, placed it untouched on the table. I didn't shout. I didn't cry. I simply stood. "You trained me to disappear," I said, voice low but clear. "I'm unlearning it now." The cloth napkin on my lap twisted in my hands. The plastered smiles faded. The camera in the corner clicked. Someone nearby gasped. Then I walked out of the room, past the polished hardwood floor, past the oak doors. I left behind silverware, the cake I didn't eat. I heard Seraphine's voice calling my name. I ignored it. Outside, the air was cool, sharp as a truth. I closed the door behind me and leaned against the siding, fingers cold. Maddie came running. "Zinnia, wait," she said, her cheeks red, not from cold. "You were always the best one." Her eyes glistened. I looked at her. Recognition softened some of my anger. Callista followed a moment later, standing beside me. I didn't speak. I pulled phone from coat. Notifications. Someone posted the brunch, the table, the empty space where my name should have been. A former coworker messaged, "Saw the cake clip. You okay?" I tapped out a reply. "I will be." I walked across the snow-soft lawn, leaving footprints in the wet grass where ice had thawed. The sky over Whitefish glowed pale blue. I glanced back at the cabin. Windows lit, people inside unaware of who I was becoming. In the reflection of a car window, I saw my face, tired, determined. I stared until I recognized her. Back inside, in my room, lit by a single lamp, I sat before the mirror. I lifted my phone, photos, videos, texts. I sorted through screenshots of the cake lineups, the social media posts, the table map with place cards. I bookmarked the message from Mother. The cabin is Zinnia's. You know why? I made copies. I saved time-stamped images. Evidence that this wasn't accident. It was pattern. My heart beat in a steady drum. For too long, I'd made excuses. Maybe she forgot. Maybe I misread. But not now. Not when everything lined up. The erased name, the hidden message, the stolen design, the cold towel. They thought forcing me outside would break me. Now they're the ones exposed to the cold. I gathered my courage. I would speak to more than just family tonight. I would call people who can bear witness. Prepare documents. Reveal what has been hidden. I would no longer shrink for their ease. Night closed in. The cabin lights dimmed one by one. I wrapped Mom's towel, washed, cleaned, around my shoulders. I stared at the snow under moonlight, letting the silence carry me. Inside me, something solid formed. Dignity. Not about retribution, about truth, about finally being seen. I woke before dawn, restless and honest. Moonlight slanted through the trees, outlining the party setup across the clearing. Evergreen boughs hung heavy with snow, strings of lanterns draped from branch to branch. I could see the chairs arranged in semicircles, decorative ribbons tied to posts, all of it staged. Decorations included blueprints I once shared online, my name quietly cropped out. I pulled my coat tighter. Breath visible, I stared. They were preparing a celebration, and I hadn't been invited. I slipped from my room, boots crunching on ice-coated boards, collars turned up against the cold. The house breathed around me. Seraphine's laughter echoing faintly through walls, guests murmuring. My phone in my pocket glowed with old sketches, images of cabins, windows, railings, designs I drafted alone under lamplight. I carried the weight of those designs in my chest. I clutched them now, itching to reclaim them. I stepped toward the path leading from the cabin, where lanterns lit the trees like stars dropped low. The scent of pine, wood smoke, flawless plans she claimed as her own. Pain glowed in my veins. I stopped. From the path I saw her, Seraphine, standing before guests, wine in hand, making a toast. To family strength, she said, to memories built, to compassion. She paused, laughter, then she smiled at me. I felt the sting. And to Zinnia, whose sketches once filled our dreams. She nodded once, polished, but the crowd clapped for her. My name was mentioned, but my presence, ignored. I edged forward, chest tight. Ronald stood beside her, raising his glass. I moved closer. Sina whispers from neighbors, but Thea caught my sleeve. Aunt Zinnia, maybe you should... Her voice trailed off. I shook her off. No, I need to see this. Moved by something raw, not performative. They raised glasses. Crystal chimed. The cold night air held their cheers, and I, standing beneath lantern glow and tapestry of snow, felt removed. Mere symbol, not family. With resolve, I turned and walked into the woods. The path was narrow, snow-slick and shimmering, wind through branches like whispers. I edged deeper until I found a sturdy pine with low, wide limbs. The moon glinted through needles. I climbed with trembling hands, pulling coat close, wrapping myself in its rough bark. Up there, perched, alone with sky, I felt unseen yet safe, like being both spectator and participant. Seraphine's drone camera flicked overhead. I heard its whir. She was filming again. Always yes-man moments for her. Always image before substance. I closed my eyes, hands on bark. Childhood memories surfaced, hiding in trees when Father and Seraphine argued, climbing away so voices couldn't reach me. Up here, no one can touch me, I once believed, but I was always waiting for someone to acknowledge me. Today I didn't wait anymore. Night deepened. Stars pulsed. The wind shook snow off branches. A branch snapped. I flinched. My heart hammered. But I didn't fall. I laughed, breath cracking in cold air, unexpected, unrestrained. If I survive this, I win, I whispered to moonlight. I took out my phone, propped it against trunk, pressed record, face pale, breath visible. When your family throws a party for everyone but you, I said, voice trembling but firm. I narrated design credits erased, moments erased, the birthday cake with no name, the towel stained, the letter hidden. I didn't name her guilty, only spoke facts, photos, text messages, deeds. I held each piece like proof that I exist, that my voice matters. Morning slipped forward. Dawn tinted snow, pink and gold. I turned off the recording, saved the file. I looked down through tree limbs at the clearing. Guests gathered. Seraphine smiled at a visitor, the ribbons catching light like mocking ribbons for me. The camera rig still hovered. I considered shouting across, but instead I trudged back, steps heavy in fresh snow, sinking into dampness. Back in the cabin, the smell of breakfast, eggs and bacon sizzling, coffee brewing, voices warm. All of them inside except me. I paused at threshold. Seraphine spotted me. Mouth paused in mid-smile. Clattering forks ceased for a heartbeat. Then she resumed. "Oh, Zinnia, good morning," she said sharply. "You look cold." I didn't answer. I found Callista in the kitchen. She slid me a plate, gave me her eyes. Steady, knowing. Maddie hovered behind, face pale. I ate slowly, tasting nothing but irony. Their conversation danced as if I'd been reinstated. "Come in, warm up," Seraphine said. A false kindness. I accepted nothing. Later, back upstairs, I replayed the video I had recorded. My voice raw but clear. I watched the red recording symbol, the moonlight on snow, words I had been too polite to say before. This time, I would show people what I'd withheld. Collection of proofs in hand. Maps, text messages, sketches, deeds. I would not let them frame this story without me. The holiday lights outside glowed gold, cold air pressing through windows, snow piled on windowsills. I zipped up coat I had abandoned earlier. I walked to the porch, looked at Seraphine through frost-glazed glass. She saw me. Her face registered surprise. I pressed my lips together. I turned away and walked back inside. The gathering continued as if nothing had shifted. But something had changed. I was not invisible anymore. I arrived at the porch door before sunrise. The sky was pale blue, pink edges along the horizon. I carried the weight of the night in my bones when I knocked, lightly, intentionally. The knock wasn't gentle, and this time I opened the door first. Seraphine stood framed in warm light, her silhouette precise in the doorway, smug in her posture. I held the envelope in my hand, edges sharp, weight obvious in my palm. "Good morning," I said softly. "I came to say goodbye. And one more thing." Her eyes narrowed. She might have expected tears or excuse, but I offered none. The envelope slid across the threshold, into her grasp. She caught it, curiosity flickering. A courier stood off to the side, briefcase in hand. Before Seraphine could object, the courier cleared throat. "You've been served." My voice didn't shake. I watched legal papers exchanged, fraud, forgery, property theft, all in black and white. Callista beside me nodded once, somber but satisfied. Evidence collected, signatures, dates, emails, text message from Mom. The deed that Seraphine claimed belonged to her legally. That deed I knew was forged. Seraphine's lips parted. Her color drained slightly. Father stepped forward, hand raised. "This is ridiculous," he said. The room echoed, glass chiming, chairs scraping wood. Maddie stood behind Seraphine, eyes wide. Callista's face remained steady, lined with years of witnessing. "You played legal," I said, voice calm. "I studied it." Flashback. I remember sitting with Callista at 2 a.m, curled in a corner of my room, tables covered in paper. The text message from Mom. The deed filed 3 days after funeral. The witnesses who saw Seraphine storm into county office. The video of Seraphine passing off my cabins, my designs. I had made a timeline. I'd felt fear, yes, but fear sharpened into resolve. Now, facing Seraphine across this hall, I felt something release. I walked through the rooms of the cabin, past Mother's coat hanging in the closet, the photo of her in her garden, petals still half vibrant, even though time had dulled everything else. I paused by the book where I'd tucked the letter Mom sent just before. I didn't say anything. I told her, "I'm not just leaving this house, I'm leaving the chains behind." No shouting, just truth laid bare. Guests shifted, whispers started rising. A soft gasp when someone read the first line from the lawsuit document. The room felt small. Seraphine's face hardened, practiced, as though she were performing. A camera flashed. Someone said, "Brava, Zinnia." Others hushed. The tension steadied. Outside, snow glistened in dawn's light. I packed the last of my things, a box in one hand, a small photo in the other. Mother's handwriting, design notes, the deed copy. Maddie slipped after me. She grabbed my hand. "I'll visit, I promise." Her voice cracked. I nodded. No words needed. I stepped into my car, cold metal key in hand. I looked back at the cabin, the log walls, the windows, the porch light that had watched me sleep under trees, that had seen me excluded. I turned the key. Engine roared. Tires spun gently in packed snow. I drove away, leaving footprints behind. They'll fade in the drift. I won't. The online world already stirred. Messages from friends, acquaintances who'd seen the scene rising on social media. "You're brave." I always knew. "Thanks for speaking the truth." Callista sent me a link to local paper. Harper family legal battle goes viral. Seraphine's name in headlines. The word forgery standing next to it. Night fell again as I crossed state lines, snowflakes drifting past the windshield. I held a photo, me, Mom, Dad, Seraphine. Before things changed, I let it rest on the seat beside me. I didn't stare. I let sorrow and relief touch me together. I did this not for revenge. I did this for recognition, for justice of the kind you can't wave away with laughter, for all the tiny erasures, for being told I was invisible when I designed corners, drew angles, measured beams, for being told I didn't matter. They thought forcing me outside would break me. Now they're the ones exposed to the cold. I exhale, watching the road go on. I leave behind the cabin, its wooden bones, the scent of pine smoke, the way the floor creaked like it had something to say. I leave behind the memories that floated like dust in morning light, some soft, others sharp. I walk away from the echoes that once made me feel haunted, and now only seem tired. That cabin, for a while, held both my pain and my silence, but I've outgrown both. I drove through the curved white roads of winter dawn, headlights sweeping over snowbanks sculpted by wind. For miles, it felt like driving through someone else's dream. Silent woods, hills sloping like sighs, and not a single soul in sight. When the sun finally rose, it painted the world in silver and gold. The snowdrifts shimmered like memory made real. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just breathed. And now, I sit here, in my new apartment. It's not grand. It doesn't need to be. It's steady. A modest little place tucked into a 3-story building near Lake Michigan. The windows look out over the water, wide and blue-gray, always shifting, always honest. Some days the lake looks like brushed steel, others like melted pewter. But it never lies. It never pretends. There's something comforting in that. The rooms are quiet, the furniture sparse. There are no fake smiles in picture frames, no clutter of expectations, no apologies taped to mirrors. Just me. Just now. I'm alone, but not lonely. That's new for me. And it feels good. Strange, but good. Then buzz. My phone. A vibration on the wooden coffee table, pulling me back from the window. An email. I tap it open. Subject: first hearing scheduled. Attachments: evidence log, witness summary, statement of claim. It's official. The lawsuit is moving forward. My name is on the filings. The lawyers are ready. The documentation, years of notes, photos, receipts, journal entries, is in their hands now, not buried, not denied. I lean back against the couch and let it sink in. There's something liberating about it. Not the vengeance, not the headlines, but the recognition. My chest feels less tight. It doesn't erase the scars, no, but it feels like air again, like breathing without flinching. I reach into the drawer next to me and pull out an old envelope. It's a letter I wrote to Mom months ago. Unsent, unfolded, faint creases along the edges. I read the first line aloud, quietly, like a confession. I waited for them to love me the way you did. My throat tightens. I'd written it when I was still unsure, when I thought closure meant everything had to be neat and tied up with a ribbon. But grief is never neat, and neither is survival. Some stories deserve messy endings because that's how the truth looks. I blink hard as tears rise, but I smile through it. You'd be proud of me, Mom, I whisper into the quiet. Her voice comes back to me, not trembling, not weak, but strong, firm, filled with the kind of love that teaches you to stand when others want you erased. Outside, sirens rise and fade in the distance. Not for me, someone else's chaos this time. I sip my coffee, cream and nothing else, and watch steam curl into the air. On my laptop, a headline pops up. Sponsors drop Seraphine amidst legal turmoil. Former colleagues confirm leaked documents. Family member speaks out. We were silenced. She posted a video, a vague monologue. She called it betrayal. She claimed distortion. She cried for sympathy. But the comments, they don't echo her narrative. We saw the court documents. Screenshots don't lie. Funny how the victim never explains the receipts. It's turning. The narrative is shifting. Not because I screamed louder, but because I told the truth, slowly, thoroughly, patiently. Because I documented. That's the power of reality. It waits. But it lands hard. Then my phone rings. I see her name, Maddie. I answer. Her voice wraps around me like a scarf on a cold day. Familiar, warm, real. They're still blaming you, she says gently. They're saying you did this for attention. I pause. Look out the window. They can say what they want, I reply. Knowing the truth for yourself, that's your freedom too. She laughs softly. You always were the strong one. I smile, not a proud smile, a quiet one, a content one. The memory returns, sharp and sudden. That night outside the cabin, my breath fogging the air, my hands cold, knuckles red. Inside, the laughter roared. I knocked. They ignored me, locked me out, told me to sleep with the wolves, and I was scared. Back then, I was scared the wolves would hurt me. But now I know the truth. The wolves were never my enemies. I feared being silenced. I feared being erased. Forgotten. But the wolves, they howled. They sang their existence into the trees. They reminded me I was never alone. On a brisk Thursday afternoon, I walk into the Lakefront Community Center. I'm wearing denim and fleece, a pencil behind my ear, a satchel of rolled blueprints. A sign reads, Art Architecture Workshop, Women with Something to Say. It's for women like me, older, overlooked, immigrants, those who never imagined they could be heard. I teach them how to draw perspective lines, how space tells a story, how buildings protect and reveal. I show them my sketches. I share the blueprint of a home I once dreamed of building for Mom. I tell them how I saved Mom's handwriting, scanned every grocery list, every birthday note, how I embedded those words into the lining of my designs. They lean in, they nod, their eyes shine, not because I'm special, but because they see themselves in the lesson. That's voice. That's visibility. Evening falls. I light a candle in my kitchen. I journal in a notebook that's seen better days. The cover is bent, pages stained with coffee, but it holds truth. I write, some scars never fade, but they're not flaws. They're proof. I was there. I survived. I look out the window. Lake Michigan churns in moonlight. Wind hums along the glass. I let the ache come. The ache for what I lost, for the mother I loved, for the girl I used to be. But I also feel something else, something alive, possibility. Later, I unlock the bottom drawer of my closet. Inside is Mom's old coat, the one with paint on the cuffs from when she painted in the snow. I touch it, fold it gently. I hear her voice again. You are seen. Your work is seen. My breath catches, but it's steady. I crawl into bed. Soft sheets, dim lights. I leave the curtains open. Moonlight kisses the walls. I listen to the lake, the city breathing. And in the back of my mind, like an old lullaby, I hear the wolves, not snarling, not threatening, just howling. This time, I don't flinch. I close the journal, let my eyes drift shut, and I sleep, without fear. Sometimes the deepest cuts don't come from strangers. They come from the people who claim to love us the most. But surviving that betrayal? That's where your power begins. This story wasn't just about revenge. It was about reclaiming voice, dignity, and truth in a family that tried to erase it. Have you ever felt like the outsider in your own family? What would you have done if you were in my shoes? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear your story. And don't forget to subscribe for more real, raw stories that speak to the heart.